The alarm bells rang through the research station like screams in the night. Dr. Lisa Veltu pressed her four-fingered hands against the viewing window and watched the sky burn. Above Serenity Prime, dark ships moved between the stars like hungry predators. The hegemony had found them. How long until they reached the surface? She asked her assistant Crenval, whose purple skin had turned pale with fear. 20 minutes, maybe less, he whispered. The orbital defense platforms are already gone. Lisa closed her large black eyes and tried to think. The research colony held 3,000 Valerian scientists and their families. They had come here to study the strange plants that grew in this distant system. They were not soldiers. They had no weapons that could fight warships. The hegemony wanted this world for its resources. They did not care about the peaceful researchers who lived here. Lisa had heard the stories from other colonies. The hegemony took what they wanted and left nothing behind. She ran through the corridors of the research station. Her long legs carried her quickly past the evacuation centers where families hugged each other and cried. Children who did not understand what was happening played games while their parents packed everything they could carry. But where could they go? The hegemony ships surrounded the planet. The few transport vessels the colony owned could not carry everyone. Even if they could, the warships would shoot them down before they reached space. Lisa reached the experimental wing of the station. Here, in a room filled with strange machines, sat her life's work. The quantum entanglement communicator looked like a crystal flower made of metal and light. She had spent 10 years building it with her team. It was supposed to help them talk to research stations in other galaxies. They had never tested it properly. The power requirements were enormous. Using it might burn out every system in the research station. But what choice did they have? Computer, activate emergency power protocols, she said. Warning, the computer replied in its calm voice. Activating the quantum communicator will drain all station power. Life support will fail in 30 minutes. Do it. The machine hummed to life. Crystal panels glowed with blue light. Lisa felt the station's lights dim as power flowed into her creation. In 30 minutes, everyone here would be dead anyway. At least this way, someone might know what happened to them. She recorded her message in standard galactic language, then added mathematical sequences that any advanced civilization should understand. The universal language of mathematics would show their location, their situation, and their need for help. This is Dr. Lisa Veltu of the Valerian Research Colony on Serenity Prime. We are under attack by hegemony forces. 3,000 civilians are trapped on this world. We have no military capability. If anyone receives this message, please help us. Please remember that we existed. The machine pulled her message into quantum space and scattered it across the universe. The transmission would travel faster than light, reaching places no normal signal could touch. But space was vast, and the chance that anyone would hear them was small. Above them, the first hegemony bombs began to fall, far away in a different galaxy entirely. Commander Sarah Chen sat in the monitoring station orbiting Pluto. She had been watching the deep space sensors for 6 hours. It was boring work, but someone had to watch for threats to the solar system. The coffee in her cup had gone cold an hour ago. She was thinking about requesting a rotation back to Mars when every alarm in the station went off at once. Commander, Technician Rodriguez called from his station. I'm getting something impossible on the quantum detection grid. Sarah walked over to his console. Numbers scrolled across the screen too fast for her to follow. What am I looking at? It's a quantum entanglement signal, but it's not from our galaxy. The source point is... Wait, this can't be right. Rodriguez ran his hands through his dark hair. Ma'am, this signal came from the Andromeda Galaxy. That's impossible. The energy requirements alone would... I know, ma'am. But the math checks out. Someone over there has technology we've never seen before. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. They had found no signs of life in their own galaxy. Now suddenly proof that advanced civilizations existed in other galaxies had literally fallen into their lap. Can you translate the message? Rodriguez worked at his console for several minutes. Part of it is in some kind of alien language, but there are mathematical sequences I can decode. They're coordinates, and this looks like a distress signal. The main display showed a rough translation of Lisa's message. Sarah read it twice, her military mind already working through the implications. Patch me through to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. Within minutes, Sarah was talking to Admiral Marcus Rodriguez, the head of the Terran Defense Network. She had served under him during the Martian Rebellion. He was a good man who made hard decisions when he had to. "You're sure about this, Commander?" the Admiral asked. "As sure as I can be, sir. Someone in another galaxy is asking for help. They're civilians under attack." Admiral Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. Sarah could imagine him staring out his office window at Earth, thinking about the choice in front of him. Humanity had spent the last 300 years learning to survive in a hostile universe. They had fought wars against impossible odds and won. They had turned barren worlds into gardens and built cities in the vacuum of space. Other species in their galaxy called them Deathworlders because they came from a planet that should have killed them long ago. But they had never faced a choice like this. Should they risk their best ships and crews to help strangers in another galaxy? Strangers they might never see again? "Admiral," Sarah said quietly, "if we were the ones sending that distress call, wouldn't we hope someone would answer?" "Yes," Admiral Rodriguez said. "Yes, we would. Alert the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. Tell Admiral Marcus we have a rescue mission." The 3rd Fleet was humanity's best rapid response force. 30 ships equipped with experimental fold space drives that could travel between star systems in days instead of months. They had rescued human colonies from pirate attacks and natural disasters across the galaxy. Now they were about to attempt something no human had ever done before. They were going to another galaxy to fight an enemy they knew nothing about, to save people they had never met. As the fleet prepared to depart, Admiral Rodriguez sent a message back through the quantum link. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear. "We are coming. Hold on." In the research station on Serenity Prime, Lisa watched the message appear on her screen, just as the hegemony ground forces broke through the outer defenses. Around her, the crystal panels of her machine began to crack from the strain. Someone had heard them. Someone was coming. She just hoped they would arrive in time. Space around Serenity Prime twisted and broke as 30 human ships dropped out of fold space. They appeared all at once like predators stepping out of the shadows. The hegemony fleet that had been lazily bombing the planet suddenly found themselves facing something they had never seen before. Admiral Krixtor stood on the bridge of his flagship and stared at the newcomers. In his 50 years of service to the hegemony, he had seen ships from dozens of species, but these vessels looked wrong somehow. Where other races built their ships with smooth curves and elegant lines, these strangers had created angular monsters covered in armor plating and weapon ports. "What are those things?" asked his tactical officer, her voice tight with confusion. "Unknown design," Krixtor replied. "They look primitive. Crude construction. But how did they get here so quickly?" The human ships moved through space like sharks hunting in a school of fish. Their formation was tight and aggressive, nothing like the ceremonial patterns most civilized species used when approaching for battle. On the bridge of the dreadnought Indomitable, Captain Elena Vasquez studied the tactical display. 30 hegemony ships surrounded the planet, their weapons still firing at targets on the surface. Another 10 ships were in orbit, probably landing troops. "Scan complete, Captain," reported Lieutenant Torres from the sensor station. "The attackers are using energy weapons mostly. Their ships are lightly armored compared to ours. I'm reading about 40 vessels total. What about the planet? Multiple population centers under bombardment. I'm detecting that quantum signal source. It's coming from a research station on the northern continent. The signal is weak now, like their power is almost gone." Captain Vasquez nodded. She had been born on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, where equipment failure meant death in the frozen darkness. She understood what it meant when someone's power was running out. "Open a channel to the research station," she ordered. On Serenity Prime, Dr. Lisa Velthu huddled in the basement of the research complex with 200 other survivors. The hegemony soldiers had taken the upper levels, but they seemed to be waiting for something instead of finishing their attack. When her communicator crackled to life, she almost couldn't believe it. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran vessel Indomitable. Are you the source of the distress signal?" Lisa grabbed the communicator with shaking hands. The translation system worked hard to convert the alien language into something she could understand. Yes, we sent the signal. But how? You're not from this galaxy." "No, we're not. We're from the Milky Way. How many civilians are trapped down there?" "About 2,000 in this facility. Another 1,000 scattered across the planet. But you need to be careful. The hegemony has 40 warships up there." There was a pause. Then Captain Vasquez spoke again, and Lysa could hear something that might have been amusement in her voice. "We've handled worse odds. Stay low and wait for our signal." Admiral Crixtor received his own communication a few minutes later. The message came from the largest of the strange ships, translated into proper hegemony language. "This is Admiral Marcus Rodriguez of the Terran 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. You are attacking civilian targets. Withdraw immediately, or we will consider you hostile." Crixtor looked at his tactical display again. 30 ships against 40. The newcomers were outnumbered, and their technology looked primitive. Surely they understood the situation. Unknown vessels. "This is Admiral Crixtor of the Hegemony 5th Fleet. You are interfering in lawful hegemony expansion. These primitives on the planet below have been marked for relocation. Withdraw or face destruction." The response came back quickly, and this time Crixtor heard something in the alien voice that made his blood run cold. The human sounded calm, almost bored. "Admiral Crixtor, this is your final warning. Cease your attack on civilian targets and prepare to withdraw. We really don't want to have to destroy your fleet." "Destroy us?" Crixtor laughed, though it sounded forced even to his own ears. "You're outnumbered and outgunned. Your ships look like flying scrap metal." "Sir," his sensor officer interrupted, "I'm getting strange readings from their vessels. Their armor is much thicker than it appeared, and those weapon ports, some of them are launching bays for small attack craft." Admiral Rodriguez's voice came through the speakers again. "You have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal. After that, we will consider this a combat situation." Crixtor had commanded fleets for 20 years. He had faced rebels and pirates and always won through superior technology and numbers. These newcomers were obviously from some backward world that had just discovered space travel. Their ships looked like something his people had built centuries ago. "All ships prepare for battle. Show these primitives what happens when they interfere with the hegemony." The countdown reached 0, and space exploded into violence. The hegemony opened fire first, their elegant energy weapons reaching out in bright streams toward the human ships. It was a civilized attack, designed to disable enemy vessels with minimal casualties. Most species surrendered when they saw the overwhelming firepower of the hegemony. The humans did not surrender. Instead, they returned fire with weapons the hegemony had never seen before. Kinetic slugs moving at incredible speed slammed into hegemony shields. Nuclear missiles left trails of fire as they raced toward their targets. And from the smaller human ships came swarms of fighter craft that moved like angry insects. "What are those weapons?" Crixtor demanded as his flagship shook under impact. "Primitive kinetics, sir, and are those nuclear explosives?" "Nuclear?" Crixtor stared in horror as one of his cruisers disappeared in a ball of atomic fire. What kind of savages use nuclear weapons in space combat? The human ships advanced through the hegemony formation like they were not outnumbered at all. Their fighters swarmed around the elegant hegemony vessels, firing weapons that punched through armor plating designed to stop energy beams. Captain Vasquez watched the battle from her command chair. The hegemony ships were well built and their crews seemed competent, but they were fighting like they expected their enemies to be civilized. They fired precise shots meant to disable rather than destroy. They kept their formations neat and orderly. "Target their command ship," she ordered. "Full kinetic barrage. Let's see how they handle our version of civilization." The Indomitable's main guns fired, sending solid tungsten slugs toward the hegemony flagship at a significant fraction of light speed. The hegemony shields, designed to stop energy weapons, offered little protection against physical projectiles moving that fast. Admiral Crixtor felt his ship shake as human weapons tore through his outer hull. Around him, his bridge crew worked desperately to understand how they were losing so badly to ships that looked like flying asteroids. "Sir, their tactics make no sense," his tactical officer reported. "They're not trying to disable our ships. They're trying to destroy them completely. And their small craft," added another officer. "They're not following any recognized combat doctrine. They attack in groups, then break off and regroup. It's like they're hunting us." Through the chaos of battle, Admiral Crixtor began to understand something terrible. These were not the ships of a recently spacefaring civilization. These were the vessels of a species that had learned to fight in space the same way they had learned to fight on their homeworld, like predators. As his fleet began to break apart under the human assault, Crixtor tried to contact the human admiral again. His voice was no longer calm and confident. "Admiral Rodriguez, please. We can discuss terms. There's no need for this destruction. The human's reply was as calm as before, but now Crixtor heard something else in it. Not anger or hatred, but the cold efficiency of a species that treated warfare as just another problem to solve. Admiral Crixtor, we gave you a chance to withdraw. You chose to fight instead. Now we'll finish what you started. The battle was over in 2 hours. Half the hegemony fleet drifted in space as burning wreckage. The other half had surrendered. When their shields failed and human boarding, parties began cutting through their hulls with weapons that seemed designed to kill everything in their path. Admiral Crixtor sat in the detention area of the human ship Indomitable, staring at the walls around him. The room was functional and clean, but it felt wrong somehow. Everything about these humans felt wrong. The door opened and a human female entered. She was tall and muscular with dark skin and short black hair. Her uniform was practical and bore no decoration except for rank insignia. When she sat across from him, Crixtor noticed scars on her hands and arms. "I'm Lieutenant Colonel James Park," she said, through the translation device. "I need to ask you some questions about your force deployment on the planet below." "You're not what I expected," Crixtor said. "What did you expect?" "Savages. Primitives who use nuclear weapons and kinetic bombardment." He gestured around the room. "But this ship is well built. Your crew is disciplined. You treat prisoners according to civilized standards." Lieutenant Colonel Park nodded. "We follow the rules of war. But those rules exist to limit destruction, not to make war pretty. Where do you come from? What world creates soldiers like you?" Park was quiet for a moment, as if trying to decide how much to tell him. "Earth, Sol System, Milky Way Galaxy? What kind of world is Earth?" "Dangerous," Park said simply. "Very dangerous." Over the next several hours, Crixtor learned things that changed his understanding of the universe forever. Lieutenant Colonel Park told him about Earth as if she were describing the weather, but every detail made his blood run colder. Earth's gravity was twice what most species could handle. The atmosphere contained poison gas that would kill a hegemony citizen in minutes. The weather included storms that could level cities and temperature swings that would freeze or cook most forms of life. "The oceans cover most of the planet," Park explained. "They're full of creatures that hunt anything that moves. Some of them are larger than your smaller ships. How did your species survive?" "We adapted. We learned to hunt the hunters. We built tools to control fire and weather. We fought wars against other humans who wanted the same resources we needed." Crixtor tried to imagine what that would do to a species over millions of years. On hegemony worlds, the government controlled resources and distributed them fairly. There was no need for conflict. You fought your own kind. For most of our history, yes. We had thousands of different groups, all competing for territory and resources. Sometimes we traded. Sometimes we fought. We got very good at both. "But you're united now." Park smiled, and Crixtor realized it was not a happy expression. "We learned that working together was more efficient than fighting each other. But we never forgot how to fight." She showed him recordings from human history. Wars that lasted for years, fought with weapons that could destroy entire cities. Natural disasters that killed millions, followed by rapid rebuilding efforts. Diseases that swept across continents, leading to advances in medicine that other species had never needed to develop. "Your people classify worlds by how dangerous they are," Park said. "Earth is a Class 12 death world. Most species won't even visit planets that dangerous, let alone try to live on them." "How many humans live on Earth now?" "About 12 billion. We've also colonized Mars, Europa, Titan, and 47 other worlds in our system. Most of those are almost as dangerous as Earth." Crixtor stared at her. 12 billion people living on a world that should have killed them all, and they had spread to other death worlds by choice. "Why did you come here? Why help strangers from another galaxy?" Lieutenant Colonel Park looked surprised by the question. "Because you were asking for help. Because we know what it's like to face impossible odds." Meanwhile, on the planet below, Dr. Lisa Veltu was getting her own education about humans. She stood in the research station's main laboratory, watching human soldiers move through the facility with impossible efficiency. They wore armor that made them look like metal giants, and they carried weapons that seemed too large for any reasonable person to handle. But they moved through the building like they weighed nothing at all, clearing out hegemony forces room by room. "Dr. Velthu?" The voice came from behind her. She turned to see a human without armor, wearing what looked like a medical uniform. "I'm Dr. Rebecca Torres, field medic with the 3rd Fleet. Are you injured?" "No, How do you move so quietly? Your soldiers, I mean." They're huge, but I can barely hear them. Dr. Torres smiled. Training. We learn to move carefully when we're young. On Earth, making too much noise can attract things that want to eat you. Lysa followed Dr. Torres through the station as human medics treated wounded Valerians. She noticed that the humans worked with calm efficiency, even though explosions were still going off in other parts of the building. Aren't you afraid? She asked. Of what? The fighting. The danger. Some of your people are still in combat zones. Dr. Torres paused in her work. Fear is useful. It keeps you alert. But you can't let it stop you from doing your job. On my world, we avoid conflict. We solve problems through discussion and compromise. That works when everyone involved is reasonable, Dr. Torres said. But sometimes you meet people who only understand force. Through the window, Lysa could see human fighters moving across the landscape. They advanced in small groups, covering each other as they moved from position to position. It looked like a dance, but she realized it was actually a hunting technique refined over generations. How long have your people been fighting wars? Since before we were fully human. Maybe 1,000,000 years in one form or another. Dr. Torres finished bandaging a Valerian child's arm and moved to the next patient. We didn't choose to become warriors. Our world made us into warriors, but you're also healers, teachers, scientists. We're whatever we need to be. That's how you survive on a death world. Later that day, the fighting ended. Human forces had eliminated or captured every hegemony soldier on the planet. The efficiency of it disturbed Lysa more than she wanted to admit. These beings fought like it was routine work, not a desperate struggle for survival. Captain Vasquez arrived at the research station as the sun was setting. She was smaller than Lysa had expected, but there was something about the way she moved that reminded Lysa of the predators she had studied in her xenobiology research. Dr. Velthu, I'm Captain Vasquez. How are your people holding up? Better than expected, thanks to you. But I have to ask, why are you so good at this? Good at what? Fighting. Killing. You do it like it's normal. Captain Vasquez sat down on a piece of broken equipment. On Earth, everything is trying to kill you from the moment you're born. Weather, disease, predators, other humans, natural disasters. We learned that the universe doesn't care if you're peaceful or civilized. It only cares if you're strong enough to survive. That sounds terrible. Maybe. But it also means we don't give up easily. When someone sends a distress call, we answer it. Because we know what it's like to need help and have no one come. Lysa looked out at the human soldiers, setting up defensive positions around the research station. They worked together like they had been doing it their whole lives, which she was beginning to suspect they had. What happens now? Now we make sure the hegemony understands that this world is under our protection. Then we figure out how to get home. You came all this way just to help us? Captain Vasquez stood up and adjusted her equipment. Dr. Veltu, we came from another galaxy to answer your distress call. Of course, we're going to make sure you're safe before we leave. As night fell over Serenity Prime, Lysa realized that the universe was a much more dangerous place than she had thought, but it was also a place where strangers would cross impossible distances to help people they had never met. She just wished those strangers didn't have to be so terrifyingly efficient at violence to do it. Admiral Krixtor paced in his quarters aboard the human ship. The room was comfortable enough, but he could not stop thinking about everything he had learned. Through the porthole, he could see the remains of his fleet. Ships that had been the pride of the hegemony navy now drifted as twisted metal and cooling plasma. The door chimed, and Dr. Rebecca Torres entered carrying a medical kit. She had been checking on him daily since his capture, treating the minor injuries he had received during the battle. How are you feeling today, Admiral? She asked, setting up her equipment. Confused, he admitted. Your people destroyed my fleet, killed my soldiers, but you treat me like an honored guest. Dr. Torres began scanning him with a medical device. You're a prisoner of war, not a criminal. There's a difference. On my world, enemies are either destroyed or converted. We don't have prisoners of war. Then you've been lucky. You've never faced an enemy that could capture your forces. She made notes on her tablet. Your blood pressure is still elevated. Are you having trouble sleeping? Krixtor laughed bitterly. How could I sleep? Everything I thought I knew about warfare has been proven wrong. Dr. Torres sat down across from him. Tell me about your world, Admiral. What's it like? Peaceful, beautiful. The government provides everything we need. There's no hunger, no disease, no conflict between citizens. That sounds wonderful. It was. But it also made us weak, didn't it? Crixtor looked at her with his large, dark eyes. We've conquered dozens of species, but they were all like us. Civilized, peaceful. We never faced anything like humans before. What do you mean? You fight like the universe is trying to kill you. Dr. Torres was quiet for a moment. The universe is trying to kill us. That's not paranoia, Admiral. That's just reality. Over the next hour, she told him about Earth's history, not the military history that Lieutenant Colonel Park had shared, but the everyday struggle for survival that every human faced. The planet tries to freeze us every few thousand years, she explained. Ice ages that last for centuries. Then it swings the other way and tries to cook us. Volcanic eruptions that block out the sun. Asteroid impacts that can wipe out most life on the planet. How do you survive events like that? We adapt. We prepare. We help each other. When the Yellowstone supervolcano erupted 300 years ago, it should have killed billions. Instead, we evacuated the danger zone and built underground cities until the ash clouds cleared. Crixtor tried to imagine his own people facing such a disaster. The hegemony's response would be to debate the proper evacuation procedures while everyone died. But it's not just the big disasters, Dr. Torres continued. Earth is full of diseases that evolve faster than we can cure them. Predators that hunt in packs. Weather that can kill you in minutes if you're not prepared. And your people live there by choice. We live there because it's our home, and because it made us strong enough to live anywhere else. She showed him pictures on her tablet. Cities built on floating platforms in the middle of violent storms. Farms carved into the sides of active volcanoes. Research stations at the bottom of oceans filled with creatures that could swallow a human whole. This is why your weapons don't work against us, she explained. You build weapons to fight civilized opponents. We build weapons to fight everything, including each other, especially each other. Humans are the most dangerous predators on our planet. Meanwhile, down on Serenity Prime, Dr. Lisa Velthu was working alongside human xenobiologist Dr. Michael Chang to evacuate the research station. The process was going faster than she had thought possible, but watching the humans work was disturbing. They moved through the building like they had mapped every room in their heads. They carried equipment that was twice as heavy as anything a Valerian could handle, and they did it all while wearing armor and carrying weapons as if they expected to be attacked at any moment. Do you always work like this? She asked Dr. Chang as they packed up her research samples. Like what? Ready for battle. Even when you're doing peaceful work. Dr. Chang looked around the room as if seeing it for the first time. I guess we do. It's just habit. Habit? On Earth, conditions can change fast. A clear day can become a deadly storm in minutes. Animals that seem harmless can kill you if you're not careful. We learn early to be ready for anything. Lisa watched him pack her delicate specimens with incredible care, even though his hands were scarred and calloused from years of hard work. You're very gentle with things that matter. We have to be. On a dangerous world, you can't afford to break the things you need to survive. Through the window, they could see human engineers setting up a temporary communication array. The work looked effortless, but Lisa realized they were doing in hours what would have taken her people weeks to accomplish. How do you work so fast? Practice. And necessity. Dr. Chang sealed another container of specimens. When your environment can kill you, you learn to work efficiently. Time wasted is often life lost. A human soldier appeared in the doorway. She was young, maybe in her early 20s, but she moved with the confidence of a veteran warrior. Dr. Chang, Captain Vasquez wants to see you in the command center. On my way. He turned to Lisa. Want to come? You might find the discussion interesting. The command center had been set up in what used to be the station's main conference room. Captain Vasquez stood over a holographic display showing the planet and the space around it. Other human officers surrounded the table discussing tactical options. The hegemony reinforcements are 12 hours out, one officer reported. 3 more fleets, approximately 100 ships total. What about the civilians? Captain Vasquez asked. All evacuation sites are secure. We can have everyone off planet in 6 hours if needed. Lisa listened to them discuss the approaching threat with the same calm tone they might use to discuss the weather. They were outnumbered 3-1, but they seemed more interested in protecting civilians than in their own survival. Captain, she interrupted, you should leave. Take your ships and go home. You've done enough. The room fell silent. Captain Vasquez looked at her with surprise. We're not abandoning you to face 100 hegemony ships alone. But you'll be destroyed. There are too many of them. Maybe, But running away isn't an option. Why not? You don't owe us anything. We're strangers from another galaxy. Captain Vasquez walked over to her. Dr. Velthu, let me tell you something about humans. We don't measure success by whether we survive. We measure it by whether we do the right thing. That's insane. Probably. But it's who we are. Dr. Chang spoke up from his position at the tactical display. Dr. Velthu, humans have been fighting impossible odds for our entire history. We've learned that sometimes the only way to win is to refuse to lose. What does that mean? It means we don't give up even when logic says we should. Later that night, Lisa found herself on the observation deck of the research station, looking up at the stars. Human patrols moved through the area below, their equipment creating small points of light in the darkness. Dr. Torres joined her at the window. Couldn't sleep? I keep thinking about what you told me, about Earth and why humans are the way they are. It's a lot to process. You're not what I expected when we sent that distress call. What did you expect? Heroes, I suppose. Noble warriors who fight for justice and righteousness, Dr. Torres laughed softly. We're not heroes, Dr. Velthu. We're just people who've learned that the universe doesn't care about fairness. So we try to create a little fairness wherever we can. Even if it kills you, even then. Because the alternative is letting the universe stay unfair. Lisa looked up at the stars again. Somewhere out there, more hegemony ships were approaching. Tomorrow would bring another battle, and the humans would face impossible odds again. But for the first time since this all began, she wasn't afraid. These strange, violent, gentle beings from another galaxy had taught her something important. Sometimes the most unlikely people become exactly what you need them to be. The second battle never happened. Admiral Marcus Rodriguez stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the hegemony reinforcement fleets drop out of hyperspace. 120 ships arranged in perfect formation, their weapons powered but not yet aimed. They had come expecting to find their comrades victorious and the strange alien threat eliminated. Instead, they found the wreckage of Admiral Krixtor's fleet scattered across space, and 30 human ships waiting in a defensive formation around Serenity Prime. Admiral Rodriguez, came a transmission from the lead hegemony vessel. This is Admiral Thexmore of the Hegemony 2nd Assault Fleet. Explain the meaning of this destruction. Rodriguez looked at his tactical display. His ships were outnumbered 4-1, and his ammunition was running low from the previous battle. By any reasonable measure, he should surrender or retreat, but humans had never been particularly reasonable. Admiral Thexmore, this is Admiral Rodriguez. Your forces attacked a civilian research station without provocation. We intervened to protect non-combatants. You are not part of this galaxy's political structure. You have no authority here. We have the authority that comes from superior firepower and the will to use it. But I'd prefer to discuss this diplomatically. There was a long pause. Admiral Rodriguez could imagine the confusion among the hegemony commanders. In their experience, outnumbered forces either surrendered immediately or died heroically. They didn't offer to negotiate. What terms do you propose? Admiral Thexmore finally asked. Simple. You withdraw from this system and leave the Valerians in peace. In exchange, we'll release your prisoners and provide medical aid to your wounded. And if we refuse? Rodriguez looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. Men and women who had volunteered to cross between galaxies to help strangers. People who would fight impossible odds because it was the right thing to do. Then we'll destroy as many of your ships as possible before you destroy us. And the survivors will spread word throughout your empire about what happens when you attack civilians under human protection. The threat hung in space between the two fleets. Admiral Thexmore had come here expecting to crush a minor rebellion. Instead, he faced an enemy that treated overwhelming odds as a minor inconvenience. You would sacrifice yourselves for aliens you've never met? Admiral Thexmore, let me tell you something about humans. We've been dying for causes we believe in since before we learned to make fire. The scale doesn't matter. The odds don't matter. What matters is doing what's right. Down on Serenity Prime, Dr. Lisa Velthu listened to the conversation through the research station's communication array. Around her, human soldiers prepared for battle, while Valerian civilians huddled in safety. The contrast was surreal. Dr. Velthu, Captain Vasquez said, approaching her position, I need to ask a favor. Anything. If this goes badly, I want you to contact our galaxy. Tell them what happened here. Make sure our people know we didn't die for nothing. Lisa stared at her. You're really prepared to die for us. We're prepared to die for what's right. There's a difference. I don't understand you people, Captain Vasquez smiled. Join the club. Half the time we don't understand ourselves. The communication channel crackled back to life. Admiral Rodriguez, I wish to speak with Admiral Crixtor. He's aboard my flagship. Hold on. A few minutes later, Admiral Crixtor's voice came through the speakers. He sounded tired but not defeated. Admiral Thexmore, this is Crixtor. What is your status? Are you being mistreated? No, the humans follow their rules of war. They treat prisoners well. There was a pause. Thexmore, I need to tell you something about these beings. They're not like anything we've faced before. Explain. They come from a world that kills everything on it. They've spent millions of years learning to survive impossible conditions. Fighting impossible odds is normal for them. Are you saying we cannot defeat them? I'm saying that defeating them would cost us everything we have. And they know it. They're counting on it. Admiral Thexmore was silent for a long moment. Through his viewports he could see the human ships. They looked crude and primitive, but he had seen what they could do to the most advanced vessels in the hegemony fleet. What do you recommend? Accept their terms. These people didn't come here to conquer us. They came here to help innocents. If we let them do that, they'll go home and leave us alone. And if we fight, then win or lose, the hegemony will never be the same. Admiral Thexmore made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Admiral Rodriguez, we accept your terms. The negotiation that followed was unlike anything either side had experienced before. Admiral Rodriguez did not demand tribute or territory. He did not insist on advantages for his own people. He simply wanted assurance that the Valerians would be left in peace. That's it? Admiral Thexmore asked during the face-to-face meeting. You want nothing for yourselves? We want to go home, Rodriguez replied. We have our own galaxy to protect. But you've demonstrated superior military capability. You could demand anything. Admiral, let me tell you something about human psychology. We fight when we have to, but we'd rather build than destroy. We'd rather trade than raid. We'd rather make friends than make enemies. Then why are you so good at war? Because our world taught us that if you're not good at war, you don't survive long enough to be good at anything else. The formal treaty was signed aboard the human flagship 3 days later. The hegemony agreed to recognize Valerian independence and establish a neutral zone around their territory. In exchange, the humans provided medical technology and released all prisoners unharmed. Dr. Lisa Velthu stood on the observation deck, watching the human fleet prepare for departure. Their ships looked as dangerous as ever, but now she understood that they were dangerous by necessity, not by choice. Dr. Velthu? She turned to see Dr. Torres approaching. Captain Vasquez wanted me to give you this. It was a small device, sleek and efficient like everything else the humans made. What is it? A quantum communicator. If you ever need help again, use this. It will reach our galaxy directly. Why would you trust us with this technology? Dr. Torres smiled. Because you know what it's like to need help. People who've been helpless don't usually misuse power when they get it. Captain Vasquez joined them at the viewport. Dr. Velthu, I have a proposition for you. Yes? Would you like to visit Earth? See the world that created us? Lisa thought about it. A death world filled with predators and disasters and humans who treated both as minor inconveniences. It sounded terrifying. Yes, she said. I think I would. The human fleet departed the next morning, slipping back into fold space as suddenly as they had arrived. They left behind a fundamentally changed galaxy. The hegemony, faced with proof that the universe contained beings far more dangerous than themselves, began reconsidering their expansion policies. The Valerians, meanwhile, started developing their own defensive capabilities. They had learned that sometimes peace required the ability to fight for it. Admiral Crixtor returned to hegemony space a changed being. His report to the High Council was simple and direct. There are species in the universe that make war the way we make art. They are precise, efficient, and utterly ruthless in pursuit of their goals. They are also capable of mercy beyond our understanding. I recommend we never give them reason to return. When asked what he meant by mercy, Crixtor showed them the recordings of his captivity. Humans who had destroyed his fleet treating his wounds. Enemies who fed him from their own supplies and shared their knowledge freely. They could have executed us all, he told the council. Instead, they taught us about honor. Years later, when historians wrote about the incident, they would call it the first diplomatic contact between galaxies. But those who were there knew the truth. It was not diplomacy that ended the conflict. It was the realization that some beings would rather die fighting than live surrendering, and that such beings were better as friends than as enemies. The quantum communicator remained active on Serenity Prime, a permanent link between galaxies. Dr. Veltu would eventually use it to establish the first intergalactic university, where beings from both the Milky Way and Andromeda could study together. But the real legacy of the incident was simpler. Throughout Andromeda, the story spread of beings who would cross impossible distances to answer a cry for help. Warriors who fought with the fury of their deadly world, but who chose mercy when victory was complete. The Deathworlders had taught them all something important. The strongest beings are often the most gentle, because they have nothing left to prove.